All right, it's Friday. Time to talk a little Jenks football. We missed Coach Gaylor last week. We both had some scheduling issues, and you had some last night too. Everybody got moved to Thursday, but I'd say it went pretty doggone well for you, 67-14. How you feeling this morning?
Uh, Obviously really good. You play three quarters and score 67, score 60 and a half. Offensively played really well. I think scored every time we touched the ball. And defensively outside of two plays, played really well. Stopped the run really well. Missed a tackle on one of their long passes, and the other one was a breakdown in coverage. So all in all, played really well and pleased with how we played.
I've asked every coach this week when it gets kind of thrust upon you that you're going to change a game to a certain day, kind of late in the week. And I say late, Tuesdays when most people made the decision. How did it change things for you?
We treated it just like we did last week with our Thursday game. Our Monday, Tuesday was really normal, and then Wednesday we just did our typical like what we would do normally on a Thursday. And the guys responded well. They had a great. We told them they found out Tuesday. Tuesday had a great practice. Wednesday was one of our best Wednesday practices or pregame practices we've had all year. So guys didn't flinch. They went out there and got after it. And again, usually like kids are a little bit more malleable or able to be, they can adjust easier than us adults. We're kind of like more creatures of habit. So I think it was harder on the coaches and the kids.
Oh, that's always the case. You tell a guy, hey, we're going to play Wednesday. All right. And you tell a coach, oh my God, I haven't gotten
Yeah.
everything done. And you run around.
Yeah.
You have to keep yourself from overdoing, don't you?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Because, especially this time of the year, like there's a fine line there. You want to make sure you get the number of reps in and get the work in, but also, you want you guys fresh.
That's what I want to talk about down the stretch. This is a game you won easily. You got two coming up against teams that we know just aren't very good, but you got to stay peak for the right time. And your team is improving. There's no question. How do you approach staying at peak against teams that on paper are not quite as good?
Like what are we preparing for? Are we preparing for Enid or Edmond North or whoever we're going to play? Or are we preparing to win a championship? Like that's the like, what are we preparing to do? You know what I mean? And we talk to our kids. The only team that can beat Jinx is Jinx. We've only done that one time this year. I said when we haven't beaten ourselves, we've won the football game. So it's us versus us. And so every day at practice is just understanding like what's our goal. The kids, and they've done it since I've been here. They break it down to goal ball, like that's ultimately the goal. So are we preparing to, like, obviously you want to win this week, but ultimately it's about taking the next step and continuing to get better. And Coach Spav at Broken Arrow would always talk about week 8, 9, 10, you need to be playing your best football, and so that's our goal. We need to be playing our best football going into the playoffs.
And you know that you're going to have some games where your guys are going to go rest. So you want them to stay sharp. You do have to have number of repetitions. How do you balance that? You want reps, but there's a point at which they're going to have to come out of the game if it gets too far gone.
Yeah, you just got to be smart with them. Again, make sure they do get game reps, and we've increased our good on good reps in practice too. We've split the kind of the older guys up into two squads, a Jinx and a Trojans team, and we do different situations and more than we have in the past, which is something that Coach Cronister wanted to do. They did down in Walnut Grove at Prosper. And so we've incorporated more good on good. So that kind of helps as well. Our guys are really good at staying up, but you still get full speed, reps versus each other, but nobody's on the ground. So that helps as well when they don't maybe get as many reps, in a game that maybe get out of hand and things like that. And they don't play as much as what they normally do.
Yeah, and then but you still do have to have numbers of reps because you do want these guys going into the playoffs at the right time. You want the first round bye, you want all that stuff, but that still means that there's a bye week in there, and you again have to stay sharp. Now you're going to balance good on good versus I can't get anybody hurt. Now I know that coaches don't like to look ahead, but as many coaches will admit, yeah, we have to sometimes too. How do you do that as you get toward the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to be smart with how you practice. Like we'll cut practice back. Like we don't cut the number of periods we do in practice back. We'll cut the time back and get them off their feet a little bit more, especially your high mileage guys, because we play so many skill kids both ways. Caleb Dillard comes to mind. Clark Carricker comes to mind. We just got to be smart with how we practice those guys and make sure they get the reps they need in practice, but also they don't need. If we have 20 teams or 20 snaps of team, they don't need 15 of them. By this time of the year. So just being smart with how we do things, even in practice with making sure that we're being smart with what group work we have, and using walkthroughs. It shouldn't be like high intensity necessarily, like individual, but I mean, you're going to block and tackle every day, right? And block, destruct on defense and do those things. But just being smart with managing those. And then, you know, in a game, you just got to be smart. You want them to get reps, but also, you're one play away from losing, a KD Jones or a Caleb Dillard. And, those guys are critical to our success. So we just got to be smart with when they're in the game.
Yeah, I mean, we could knock on some wood that most of the teams in the area are, at least at star positions, fairly healthy, maybe more so than I've seen in the past. And so you kind of, at the end of the year, you're kind of looking around like, "What? I don't want it to be us." You're just trying to be as careful as you can, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because again, you lose a guy like that, like KD, and some of the other guys around here that are that level of player. It's a huge difference. And we certainly want to be smart with those guys.
Philosophical question, and I loved asking these about coaches. Everybody talks about the process. That's kind of one of those words that Nick Saban talked about, and everybody does. And that's what you're talking about. We're playing Jinx, we're getting better, and coaches are going to say that. But there's going to come a time in the playoffs when you face a Bixby or an Owasso, and you have to game plan some. How do you balance how you do that? Because you don't want to overdo, but you don't want to underdo. So that'll work on you, but you got to work on them. How do you handle it, Adam?
I think if you're fortunate enough to get a bye week, you kind of look ahead. I mean, you don't. I say look ahead. What are some possibilities, right? Like we played both of those teams defensively. What were some issue plays, right? Formations, motions, where they blocked us in a different way, different route concepts. Like what are some issue things that came up the first time we played them? Let's make sure we're good on those, or what do we have to change with our scheme to adapt to some of those different schemes that we didn't see, that we didn't prepare for the first time.
Sure.
I think that's just natural, no matter who your next opponent is. Those are some things that, you don't. I don't say like, if we're in the quarterfinals, we're not, the team script's not going to be all Bixby or all Owasso. It's going to be, whoever we're playing there in the quarterfinals. A good chunk of it is, but you might throw an issue play in there from a Bixby or from the first time you play Owasso. It's just smart football. Just because you're limited on time, the old way of when you play somebody in the finals and having 2 weeks to prepare. It's a lot different preparing for a team like Owasso or a team like Bixby in 1 week, especially with all the different schemes and things they give you. And obviously talented, but also very well coached. And schematically, they give you a lot of things from a defensive standpoint that you got to prepare for. So being able to work ahead just a little bit, throw some things in there is always good.
Yeah, teams will tell you in the American they do that for Army and Navy because you're going to face
Have
something, so
to.
you're going to do 5 minutes on them no matter what, and then you're going to knock it off your plate and move on. As you get further toward the playoffs, I know the excitement builds. I know the blonde hair is coming over there. That's still kind of player driven.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. They keep telling me that I need to do it, but it's I didn't see Coach Trimble or Coach Riggs ever dye their hair blonde, so I'm gonna stay dark-headed. But yeah, it's outside looking in when I was at Broken Arrow was one of the coolest things. They were our rival. We played them. They're in our district, and they were always really good. But outside looking in, I thought that was like one of the coolest things ever. Is when those kids dyed their hair blonde, and it was go time, and it was kind of weird. My first year here, we were struggled early part of the season, started playing better as the year went on, and we dyed our hair blonde, and we went on a run, and we're a play away from winning the state championship from that first year from after starting out 1-3, and so there's something to it. There's a little bit of magic in that gold hair.
There is no doubt about that. I think it goes all the way into their brain, and they don't think they can
Yeah,
lose. Honest
yeah,
to goodness, I believe that.
absolutely,
Last thing,
100%.
though, because all head coaches have been assistants, there was something as an assistant coach you hated when it was time to prep for the playoffs that a head coach brought you. Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to change this or do this. Did you? Are there some things through your past that you're like, oh God, here he comes, and you're not going to do that to your guys because somebody did it to you?
You know, I think making sure that we're good with how we practice in the playoffs, making sure our guys are fresh. And I think I'm guilty of it as anybody is, grind them, grind them, grind them, kind of that old school mentality. And I think I look back at the 23 season, and we get a bye week and play Santa Fe for the second time. And defensively, that was the best we played all year, coming off not a week off, but a bye week where we
Right.
kind of cut practice back a little bit and freshen their legs. And then I think we grinded on them a little bit too much over the next 2 weeks when we get to Bixby. And They get after us, and obviously they're a really good team, but I don't think we gave ourselves, our guys, the best chance to win. So just being smart with how we prep, going into the playoffs and making sure that we're super fresh, because I think that's really important. That we grind on them in the off season and in the fall camp, and we do during the season, but also going into those last few games, you want to make sure that you're fresh, and I think that's super important, especially when you got guys. You're not two platoon, you got guys going both ways, and you look at the mileage on them. We got to be cognizant of that.
I'm just wondering what Coach Trimble would look like with blonde hair.
Man, he would look awesome. I mean, he'd have won even more championships, So
Hard to believe. That would be hard to do.
no
Well,
doubt.
let's hope the weather is not a problem anymore. I'm glad everybody's back safe. Maybe watch a little football tomorrow, and we'll talk next week.